In a block Gemara, today's daf. Today's daf is daf Lamed Tes. We're actually up to Lamed Ches on the base on the bottom, and let me remind you what we're discussing right now. We're talking about that b'di'evet according to Beis Hillel, by a korban chatas you need to sprinkle 4 times, but b'di'evet if you only sprinkle 1, you had your kapara. So what is the status of the following 3 matanos? So we had first Rabbi Yechon, then came along Rav Papa. And Rav Papa said that in certain respects it has the same din like the first matana, and in certain respects it has a din like already you finished your first matana. In what respect, for example, how is it like the first matana? So if a Yisrael sprinkles the others, it passes it. And it's chayiv misik, but it's an avodah. Yeah, if you take it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, the second set of the 3 matanas, if you take it outside the Beis Hamikdash, it passes, and so on and so forth. So a lot of dinim, the 3 matanas, which are only lechatchila, are similar, treated like the first matana. But in certain respects, it's not. In fact, in 3 respects, it's not. One of them is, he spoke about is that if the blood, the zrika, falls on the kohen's clothes, it is tameh, and you have to go to the mikveh. It has to be put in the mikveh. However, if it's the next 3 matanas, what's the din then? Comes along, the Papa says that I believe that the next 3 matanas that has a din like the first matana, that you need kibbutz, that you need to wash it. And he said, I'll bring you a raya that you need kibbutz. And his raya he brought from in the Mishnah that says there that the blood fell directly from the neck, so it never really became blood that's suitable for the mizbech. The pasuk says asher yaza, any blood that's meant to go from the mizbech, if it falls on your clothes, it makes it tameh. If it falls directly from the neck onto the beged, it does not make it tameh. And then it said, if it falls from the keren, it sounds like you sprayed already on the keren, on your clothing, it's no longer yaza. And then it says, how you say it, if it falls from the yisoid, from the base on your clothing, again, there's no longer yaza. So he made a diak. Dafke, if it already landed on the keren and then it goes on, ricochets onto your clothes, then we say there's no tumah. But if it hasn't been yet sprayed on the keren, it should be sprayed on the keren. Even number 2, number 3, number 4, it's metame your clothes. So we asked the question, and the question we asked yesterday was, to make following your way of learning, then go to the next part. It says the yisoid. According to you, only if it hits the yisoid and ricochets. But if it's supposed to go to the yisoid, it should be metame your clothes. But it doesn't because she has it. That blood is never intended to go onto the keren of the mizbeach. So how can your diak be right?
I go. If the kohen standing there, he's about to spritz and it drips on his clothes.
Depends where it comes from.
No, that's what I'm saying. So now his clothes becomes tomei. What does he do? He has to leave
so another kohen takes his place.
Hand it over to someone.
Yeah. So the Gemara says that Rashi does have 2 ways of learning pshat, but the way Rashi learns pshat is the Gemara says no. That this brayse, the Gemara says that you must say part of the question that this brayse is on the chemia. Basically, that's the answer. And so I must say the brayse on the chemia. And the must say the brayse on the chemia. And on the chemia hold that the blood that's going to go into the shvicha is also treated as blood. And therefore he says that since it's treated like blood, he holds taka, the blood that's about to go down the yisoid, though the blood that's going to go down the yisoid is considered ready as if it's sprayed. But the Rabbanon, they definitely disagree with Rab Nechemia. And now the Gemara leads the question further. But even if it's Rab Nechemia, so you're the only person who can be learning this Mishnah, if you follow the pattern of Rab Papa, makes a diak only if it hit it, but not if you're about to throw it. Could only be Rab Nechemia, because Rabbanan definitely disagree. So according to Rabbanan, you definitely have no raya, because just like the yisoid, I don't care if it hit the yisoid, didn't hit the yisoid, it's not suitable. But so you say it goes on the chemia. But even on the chemia, he only argues that the blood that's supposed to go down the yisoid, if you take it outside the base of English, it's a problem. But nowhere does he say that it's matame your clothing. That you went a step further. And in other words, we have no one. If your way of learning is correct, then there's no author to this Mishnah. That's what was going to ask. 2 lines from the bottom of the page. When did Nechemia say this only regarding the din of taking it outside the base of English and serving it over there? But why? Because take for example the limbs or the pedorim. Where over there, there's nothing to do with blood or anything else. Yet if you take it outside, and it's not ma'akik part, but you take it outside the base of English, and if you shechter, if you roast it outside the base of English, you're chayiv for shchut. So, but the kibbutz mishamla, even on the chemia, he doesn't discuss whether the blood that's supposed to go to the yisoid, if it touches your clothing, whether it's matame or not. In other words, if you learn your way of pshat in the Mishnah, they make this diak, dafka hits the keren, not this, and therefore dafka hits the yisoid, not before. There's nobody who says that. So it can't be your pshat is right. So the Gemara, why? We did learn Ram Nechemia holds that. At least this mission can be Ram Nechemia. You're right. According to Rabbanan, definitely the Papa has no raya. But they argue. But maybe Ram Nechemia holds kibbutz as well. Because Vatanya will let the Braisa. It says the following: that blood which has to go down the chute to unin kibbutz says clearly that blood that goes down the chute, that the shiraim of the blood, if it touches your clothes, you have to wash your clothes. While the Mishnah is, the Braisa continues, says if when you are pouring down the chute, you had a mind in order to eat the meat of this flesh tomorrow, it's a pigul. If you take it outside, it's chayiv. Now, who holds that if you take the blood that's supposed to go to the Yisrael, it's still considered dam as far as the korban is concerned, and you take it outside the base of Mikdash and you do avodah there, that you're chayiv for shchut chutz, for being ma'ila b'chutz? It's only on the Nechemia. And in the same Bryce it says, by To'unin Kibbutz. So clearly on the Nechemia holds that this blood is considered still blood, that if it lands on the kohen's clothing, because you still have to do another avodah, which is pouring it down the Yisrael, is matam the clothing. So I'm right. At least the Nechemia holds that. That's what I was trying to say. But however, in contrast that, blood, once you pour it down the canal that washes everything away, in other words, it's finished, this has nothing to do with milk anymore, then three things. Ain't tu'un in kibbutz. It doesn't need, if it lands in your clothes, there's no tumah. We had in mind, whatever you're doing, throwing down the amber that you can eat the korban tomorrow means nothing. And at that stage, you take the blood outside, potter. Now, who's the one who said that if you take it outside, the blood that's supposed to go to you, so you just still consider the korban and you mile outside chayiv? But in the same Bryce it says, To'un kibbutz. So at least you see it on the Nechemia. The Gemara is defending itself. At least you see it on the Nechemia holds that author of that mission before could be on the Nechemia. And he taka holds that the blood that's supposed to go to your side is considered blood of a korban, and not only hamayla b'chutzchai, but even in tu'un kibbutz, you have to wash your clothes if it lands in your clothes in your tummy. But the Gemara, how could that be? One of the three things here it says, "Machshava me'el has been right." If you have a mind pigul, because pigul. But we know that that's not the case. But Tanya, we learned before that yotzu, when it comes to pigul, yotzu sheraim, it says over there that sheraim is an exception, and haktorah emurin, and the two activities that no longer hold back the korban from fulfilling its obligation. If you didn't do the haktorah emurin, roasting the fats on the mizbech, or if you didn't pour the leftover blood down the chute, you didn't have any, or it's pulled out, whatever it is, it's not makar the kapora. And therefore the Braisa says, that there's no pigul anymore. If it's really unnecessary for the korban, then this segment cannot be mefagul the rest of the korban. No, if it cannot be mefagul the korban, how do you lip shot in the Braisa on top of the page? The Braisa on top of the page talks about blood going down to the side, and it says over there that you need kibbutz. That's what you're trying to be meraya. But then it says machshava mayelus ben, but you can make it pigul. No one knows you can make it pigul at that stage. So the Gemara says it must be that Bryce on top of the page is not talking about blood going down to the side. Not do it on the Nechemia. What is it talking about? When it says over here that the blood, that tu'un in your side, it didn't mean the blood doesn't go down the chute of the side. It meant the blood you're going to spray. The extra three, that's not extra. The chatchildik of three that you do on the karnas of mizbech. And those three, taka, you could be mefagul. Those three are mefagul. We had before. Those three are mefagul, and those three need kibbutz. Nothing to do with the shir dam. And so on. So the Gemara, and maybe we're talking about even a chatzah shebefnim. So therefore, don't do that pop either. The chatzah shebefnim, the three matanas are ma'akiv. You need to spray all four, and that's why he does all these things. So the papa is not ayah. The Nechemia can be the author. If you learn your pshat in that mission over there, then who's the author of that mission? Because you have no right. The Nechemia holds that blood that's going to go down to your side. You need to wash your clothes. Talking about how can you tell me talking about the shalosh matanas? What do you mean to un in your side? It's the wrong way. It says it, the blood that requires the base. It should have said the blood that requires to be sprayed on the kranas. What kind of side? This is the blood that's going to go on the keren. Well, so that's not a problem. I can say what he meant was ultimately it ends up in the Yisayid. Because what do you do with the leftover blood in the cup? After you spray it on the kronos, it goes down the Yisayid. So the Braisa, when it says Tomim Hata'un in Yisayid, he's talking about the blood of the kronos. Eiman Nitani Yisayid, it eventually has to go to Yisayid. So the Gemara, okay. If we're talking about the three matanas, we learned before that the three matanas, there is no pigul by the three matanas. And why not? Because we said that only those things which are matter, the carbon, have the power to make it pigul. But over here, since b'di'evid, the first matana did the whole kapor already, the next three is only l'mitzvah. So the next three, like sharia, does not allow the meat, because the meat already became mutter after the first praying. V'loy mefagla. You cannot make it pigul during the second, third, fourth, whatever you had in mind. It doesn't make it pigul. Why does it make a pigul? Because it's not really a ma'akiv anymore. And v'loy ayla legavoy. There's no issue if you take those matanas and it should be an outside zbech, and you brought it inside. It doesn't make a difference because it's not blood that's suitable to zbech. That has to be done zbech. Kisoifon. Like no, is the last three matanas is treated like the blood that goes on the side regarding these three dinim. Kisoifon, like the last process. If you want to say right, when we said in the Baraisa before, which I just mentioned before, is talking about the blood for the korban chatas on the inside. And that's a whole different story because the korban chatas on the inside, every single matana is ma'akiv, and that's why it's ma'ak, and that's why it's mefagul. So what do you tell me? When it comes to outside blood, it doesn't sully your clothes. No, papa has no raya at all from anything over here, and not all that. And the bright of Mechemia. So why introduce? You're trying to draw a contrast. Here you're chayiv, in this case you're potter. Why make a difference between the blood that goes to the Yisod and the blood that goes to the Amma? And you tell me that you say we're talking about really the blood that goes on the kronos. We're talking about the inner mizbeach. So just say the difference between the inner mizbeach and the outer mizbeach. The inner mizbeach, these matanas are ma'akiv, hence the laws and so on. And in the outer mizbeach, these matanas are not ma'akiv, and therefore the din are different. Why go all the way down to an amma, make a bigger chiddush? Even though it goes on the kronos, it doesn't mefagel, and it's not mechab, it doesn't make it close tummy. Much bigger chiddush. My potter adatoni no, it's not like a popper. So adatoni damim hanishpachin lama. Why make a contrast? Lama leaflet we listed betita. Let's talk about the very blood that goes on the cross's back and say as follows. When do we say that? What that all these dinim the blood that goes on the inner's back? Potter. So you know why? Because we're trying to say your potter on three dinim. One is it doesn't make it close tummy. And one of them is that if you take it outside, you're not chayiv. But Nechemia holds that you are chayiv if you take it outside. So you only have then two. We want to make more instances where you are potter on one case and you're chayiv in the other case. If we would have talked about if we would have made a difference between the blood that goes on the kronos and the inside, the outside, we're not going to have three differences anymore. We're only going to have two differences because the difference of a mile and mechutz doesn't exist. According to Nechemia, even the blood of the outside that's supposed to go, if you take it outside, you're chayiv. Mile and mechutz, you're chayiv. In fact, he goes even further. He holds even the yisoid. The blood that's going to go to yisoid. If you take it outside, you're chayiv. So therefore, we don't have two. We'd rather have three examples of tur, and that's why we went down to the case of Amma. You no longer have three cases of tur versus the three cases of chiyuv. That's why. Now, so that's the first. It's the way that Rashi learns. We're basically saying to the papa, we don't know if you're right or wrong, but you definitely have no basis for it. Tastes different. However, Ravina says no. I'll go back to the first place of Papa's Raya. I'm going to explain to you. Papa's Raya was, it says if it ricochets from the keren and it hits your clothes, it doesn't make it tummy. So he's medayik, but if it didn't ricochet, but if you had to spray it on the keren, even though it's the last three matanas, it makes your clothes tummy. So then we ask the question, if you follow that diak, go to the next line. It says min ha-yisoid, that once it hit the yisoid and it lands on your clothing, you're not tummy. As if to say, but if it's about to be sprayed to the side, it doesn't tummy your clothing. How can that be? It says ashe yaza, only that dam that eventually has to end up on the mizbeach. There's no ashe yaza over here. That was the question we asked, and because that came into Homaisa Mechemir, it says no. When it comes to Yisaid, it's talking about then, and it says it's not matam your clothes. Your diak doesn't, it won't work, and therefore by Yisaid, even if you're about to spray in the Yisaid, it doesn't make your clothes tummy. When it comes to keren, if it hit the keren and ricochets, it doesn't make it tummy. Now, why make that difference? Why, when it comes to keren, you say dafka if it hit the keren, and why, when the same words it says yisoid, you means even if it's about to go to the yisoid. So I'll tell you why. Mina keren means mamish. It hit the keren and then lands on your clothing. It doesn't matami you. Mina yisoid means mina roli yisoid. Yisoid means that even the blood that didn't hit the yisoid yet, but you're about to pour it down, if it lands on the kohen's clothing, it doesn't matami. whatever way you learn pshat and keren, you should learn your side. If you're learning by keren, if you're learning by your side that even row is included, and keren also learn that the row is included, that it's not metami clothing. How can you learn one versus the other? Says about haimai. This is what Avina says. Hashtar row. Because if it means that your way you want to learn that row keren is not metami your clothes, then why do you have to tell me that you side is not metami clothes? Madach row keren, which is a mitzvah to spray on the keren. You tell me if it lands on the clothes of the kohen is not metami, then because you already did your first matana, then surely blood that's a row for the shvicha, which is that's not a at all. Surely, if you have no blood, there's no problem. Surely, it's not metami the clothes. What are you going to tell me? But if you learn that keren means only if it hit the keren. That if it hit the keren, then it's not a tummy. But if it's a roll of keren, it is. And then by Yisod, you tell me that even if it's a roll, it didn't hit the Yisod yet. And even though there's a mitzvah to put it on the Yisod, but since it's already past the kronos, it's not a tummy. There's a chiddush. I understand. So you have no breda. So Saraya did a papa that the three matanas are matame your clothing. And don't ask me a question about the Yisod because that you have no breda. Hi, my house the roll of keren. Like you say, boy. Elamina keren means mina keren mamash. Hit the keren and ricochet. And mina side means min haroli yisod. If it's row to your side, then it's then it's still it's not matame. Then the Mishnah said, anything which is everything is ma'akiv. Talking about we learned, it says there when it talks about the parachatos that you bring in the inner mizbeach, anything you brought in the inner mizbeach, you have to do the four matanas, you do the 7 sprays on the pareiches, and then the meat is burnt outside what do you call it? The Beis Hamikdash. So one of them is if it's a pad helm dover shel tzibur, if the entire community follow the bezin. Another one is if the bezin told them avodah zorah, where the carbon is a little bit different. You bring 2 karbanos, a chatas and an oila, and then you have the par kohen Mashiach, the kohen who's anointed, has to bring a special pot. Then you have a Yom Kippur, and all these potters you bring in the mizbeach, you sprinkle the lamb and all that, and then you burn it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. The Torah we learned. It says in the pasuk, "Va'asa you should do la par." It's a pasuk that you should do to the par of a chatas, just like you did to the. You should do to the par. Kain Mashiach kasher also the par chatas. Ken yasalei. Just like you did to the par chatas over here, you should do the same thing over here. So it's talking about here a par hel. It's talking about here a par helam dover shel tzibur. And it says over here that just like you doing over here, just like you did over here by the par of Yom Kippur, you should over here by the par of a par helm dover shel tzibur. You should do exactly the same thing here. Now, what are you learning from Yom Kippur to helm dover? The Torah already delineates exactly what you're meant to do here. Everything. So what do you tell? What are you adding and saying? But follow what you did in the psukim before I told you. Ma bo lilmaid. What does it come to teach you? You know what's coming to teach you? Lichva b'haza asay. In fact, it has nothing to do with the previous carbon. You thought Kasher also means the previous carbon. No, Kasher also, like I told you, to do with this carbon. And we learned by Kachim that it has to repeat twice before we say that it's Ma'akeh b'di'evet. So for us, Kasher, I tell you that all of these matanas that you have to do in the Hazoyas, it's Ma'akeh. By Achatos Apnim, every activity is Ma'akeh. The Lamachim Chisar Achim, the Karmatan, if you're missing any matanas, Lo Yasser Lo Klum. Then it says, but there's 2 sets of matanas. You do a set of 7 by the pareiches and a set of 4. Ainly, so I would have thought ainly ela matan sheva, that only the 7 sprays that's ma'akiv. Why only the 7 sprays? That you want to spray on the pareiches. So ma'akiv b'chamokim, anywhere where the halacha is, you have to spray on the pareiches. It's ma'akiv. I would have thought over here also it's ma'akiv. Okay, and repeats it twice. Or b'matan dalad menayin. But when it comes to spraying the 4 times, how do you know it's ma'akiv as well? Because we know by a normal chatas, we said before, all you need is 1 matana. The other 3 are on a mitzvah. So how do you know by the inner mizbeach it's makiv? Therefore it says weiter in the pasuk, kain yasa, kain yasa. It says again, kain yasa. It says also la par chatas, kain yasa again, kain yasa. To teach you another din that even the 4 matanas are ma'akiv the inner mizbeach. Then it continues. La par. The pasuk says also la par, kasha also la par. The parachatas. That's twice. The par, the first part. So now we're going to say, even though the pasuk is talking about par helen dovish tzibur, every par is teaching you something extra. We're talking about a par. We know already from the previous psukim. Why say again par? It's all extra to say that we're adding other karbanos of pnim to learn from here. So what's the
kenyas is going on the other parts of
so we're saying here like kenyas is to so it says because it says v'asa la par kasher asa. The word v'asa is this what you have to do. Says it twice. It's ma'akiv. Says it a 3rd time. Must be. It's not a 3rd time. It's a 2nd time for another activity. So the yasa what you have to do is ma'akiv. Now it's talking about the noun, lapar. Which part? So each one's coming to add a different carbon that is brought on the inner mizbech. So the first is coming to tell you par yom kippurim. That par yom kippur also should be done like this. And what do we learn from there with him? Pash. That's no more. Then the pasuk continues. Kasher also lapar again. It says like he did to the par. What part are we talking about here? Zeh par koine Mashiach. And then it says hachatas. We're talking about a par koine Mashiach. That is, there's also a par hel and dovish tzibur. Not they did a normal aveda, where they did avodah zarah. Elu se'id avodah by avodah zarah. By if all the Eden did avodah zarah together, because Bezin says it's mutter, you bring two kabbanas on oil and achatas. That's what, and you learn dinim from there as well. Yachos, I would have thought you're already including every single carbon chatas that's brought on the inner mizbeach. Maybe I should also add, and I should add afse idi the golem, that which you bring on Yom Tov is Rosh Chodashim and Rosh Chodesh, but these are also inner kabbanas, and therefore, if you remember, bringing more shvuos, if somebody did not know they were tamei and they entered the base of Migdash or they ate kachim, and they never found it afterwards either. There was no yediyah in before, there was no yediyah afterwards. So that's where the Se'ile, well, we had a Machlis here, but the Se'ile, the Golim, and the Chodashim are coming to be Mechaper. So, Talmud, so therefore, maybe that's also coming to include that's Ma'akiv, all these things. Talmud Leimer, there's one meat. It says there, you can't yasa loy, only to this carbon, and not to another. So which one are we going to negate? The one that's the furthest from it, and that is either the Golim or the Chodesh. Someone said, how do you know that's the furthest? Why did you decide to include the par helam of the Seir of the Zorah and the Koyim Mashiach? And you're excluding the Seir of the Golim Mashiach Chodesh. In a way, it's similar to that one because it's all a chatas, a kapara, and not like a Koyim Mashiach, which is a new Koyim. To explain to you. Marbani said, you know why I include all of these? Shemechapin ala veid mitzidu. Every one of them, you know exactly what the veid is, what it's for. Remember, the whole union of seeing the God of Chodoshim is you never knew you did an aveda. It's a carbon chatas. It's there to forgive, but you had no idea. You didn't know you were tummy before you walked to the base of Mikdash, and you didn't know you were tummy after you left the base of Mikdash. So no one knew. So then the Gemara continues. It says in the pasuk, we're analyzing every word in the pasuk, and it says the chipper aleim hakoyin, the koyin should forgive. The chipper, what's the? In other words, as if to say an extra kapara to tell you that even if he didn't do something right, there's a kapara. What didn't you do right? Afa pishalei samach. He didn't place your hands on it, and then the pasuk says at the end, v'nislach lehem again, v'nislach afa pishalei nasan shiraim. Even everything else in the inner mizbeach is ma'akiv, but I want you to know that even that these two activities in the inner mizbeach is not ma'akiv. That if you didn't do the smicha, you didn't lean on it, and you didn't pour down your side, it's not ma'akiv. So more ask a question now. Why did you decide? Live so bahazoyis. You say, oh, one second. The pasuk is telling you certain things are vital, and certain things, okay. If it didn't happen, it didn't happen. How do you know what to include? What's vital? What isn't? Mara East lives so bahazois. He said that what? That if you spring on the, if you forgot to spray all seven, no good, or the four, no good. But you said, look, if you forgot to do the smicha, you forgot to pour down your side, no problem. Amr, so we say very simple. Hazoyes, whatever you need, seven, and you didn't do the seven against the braychas, it's ma'akiv. The four by the inner mizbeach is there's a ma'akiv. Umachshani b'smicha v'shirayim, and a machsha by smicha v'shirayim, because by the outer mizbeach they are never she'ein ma'akiv b'chol makom. The outer mizbeach, if you didn't pour anything down your side, you had no wine, no blood left over, no big deal. If you didn't do the smicha, it's a mitzvah. You didn't do the smicha, it's not ma'akiv. Okay, so the Gemara Amamar. The Gemara tomorrow's Gemara will go through the whole thing. We'll just start the first few lines. Amamar. The first thing he said was Ainli Elamat and Sheva. The seven. Why the seven versus the four? That every time you need seven, if you don't do it, it's not you're not Yotze. Where else do you need seven? Heicha. What are you talking about? I'm gonna pop up the para. The para aduma. By the para aduma, you have to spray it 7 times, and it says there's chukas atayda, which means that if you don't do it this way, it's not going to be Yotze. You have to spray by the oil moed, and in direction of the oil moed, and the goyim by a leper. Then the kohen has to take a log of oil, and besides putting it on his right thumb and right earlobe, and all that, you also have to spray in the direction of the base of Mikdash 7 times. And over there, it's because it says Zois Tia, this is how it should be, and if you whatever it says Zois Tia, it says this is how it should be. If you don't do it exactly this way, it doesn't work. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem.